was a cold, rainy night when it happened. The kind of night where you can't see more than a few feet ahead because of the thick mist. I was home alone, my parents having gone out of town for the weekend. Our house, an old Victorian, was creaky and full of shadows. I was curled up on the couch, a blanket over me, half watching some mindless TV show while scrolling through my phone. It was around 11 p.m. when I first heard it. A soft tapping, like someone lightly knocking on the door. I paused, thinking maybe I had imagined it. The rain was loud, and sometimes the old pipes made weird noises. But then I heard it again, a bit louder this time. My heart started to race as I muted the TV and listened. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly got up, clutching my phone like it was a weapon, and walked towards the front door. The knocking continued, steady and insistent. When I reached the door, I hesitated, debating whether to open it. Instead, I decided to look through the peephole. There was no one there. I felt a chill run down my spine. Maybe it was just a prank, I thought, some kids messing around. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I checked the locks, made sure everything was secure, and decided to go back to the living room. As I turned away, I heard it again, but this time it was coming from the back of the house. My stomach dropped. Someone was knocking on the back door now. I tiptoed through the dark hallway, my breath shallow and my hands trembling. I reached the kitchen and saw the silhouette of a person standing just outside the glass door. I froze, my mind racing. Should I call the police? Confront them? My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. I took a step back, trying to stay out of sight, and grabbed a knife from the counter. The figure outside knocked again, harder this time. It was a rhythmic knock, almost taunting. I couldn't see their face, just the outline of their body. I dialed 911 on my phone, my fingers shaking so much I almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's calm voice was a stark contrast to my panic. There's someone outside my house, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. They're knocking on the doors, and I don't know what to do. Stay on the line with me, she said. Police are on their way. Are all your doors and windows locked? Yes, I replied, my eyes darting around the kitchen. But they're still out there. Can you see them now? She asked. I peeked around the corner and saw that the figure was gone. My heart skipped a beat. Where did they go? I crept closer to the door, straining to see into the dark backyard. Nothing, just rain and shadows. They're not there anymore, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Stay inside. Keep the doors locked. The police will be there soon, the operator assured me. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and backed away from the door. I went back to the living room and turned off all the lights, trying to make myself invisible. The silence was deafening, each creak of the house making me jump. I felt like I was being watched, every hair on my body standing on end. Then I heard a noise from upstairs, a soft thud like something heavy being dropped. My blood ran cold. I was supposed to be alone in the house. I clenched the knife tighter, my mind racing. Had they somehow gotten inside? I moved silently towards the staircase, each step feeling like it took an eternity. The upstairs hallway was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I listened, trying to hear any movement. Nothing, just the sound of my own breathing, fast and shallow. I slowly ascended the stairs, my heart in my throat. When I reached the top, I paused, listening. Another thud, this time from my parents' bedroom. I inched closer, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I had to know. I had to see. I reached the door and pushed it open, the hinges creaking loudly in the silence. The room was dark, but I could make out the outline of the bed, the dresser, the open closet door. My eyes adjusted, and then I saw it. A figure, crouched by the window, trying to open it from the inside. They turned at the sound of the door, and our eyes met. For a split second, we just stared at each other. Then they lunged at me. I screamed, raising the knife, but they were too fast. They grabbed my arm, twisting it until I dropped the blade. I struggled, kicking and scratching, but they were strong. Too strong. We fell to the floor, and I felt their hands around my throat, squeezing. I gasped for air, my vision starting to blur. Just as I thought I was going to pass out, there was a loud crash from downstairs, the front door bursting open. The intruder hesitated, loosening their grip just enough for me to shove them off. They scrambled to their feet and ran, disappearing into the night. I lay there gasping for breath as the police stormed in. They found me minutes later, shaking and crying on the bedroom floor. The police searched the house and the surrounding area but found no trace of the intruder. They assured me that I was safe, but I knew better. Whoever it was, they had gotten inside. They had been in my home, in my space, and they had escaped. That night changed everything. I never felt safe in that house again. Every creak, every shadow, every tap on the window sent me into a panic. I moved out as soon as I could, but the fear followed me. It's been years, and I still have nightmares about that night, about the figure in the dark, the hands around my throat, and the sound of my own heartbeat, louder than the rain. I never imagined my Friday night would turn into a nightmare. I had planned a quiet evening at home, a rare treat after a long week at work. My wife was out of town for a conference, so it was just me and our dog, Max. The house was peaceful, nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I had just settled on the couch with a beer and a pizza when the power went out. Annoyed, I grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight and made my way to the circuit breaker in the basement. Max followed close behind, his ears perked up. The air felt colder down there, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones. I flipped the switches, but nothing happened. The basement remained dark and silent, except for the sound of my breathing and Max's low growl. Must be a power outage, I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. I decided to head back upstairs and call the power company. As I turned, I heard a faint creaking sound from above. I froze, listening. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing in the dark basement. Max started barking, his growl turning into an aggressive bark. I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone was in the house. I grabbed a heavy wrench from the toolbox and slowly made my way back upstairs, Max leading the way. The living room was dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through the curtains. I could see the front door was still locked, but something felt off. The footsteps had stopped and the house was eerily quiet. I tiptoed through the living room, checking each room methodically. The kitchen, the dining room, the study empty. I was beginning to think I had imagined it when Max's barking intensified. He was facing the stairs, his hackles raised. I followed his gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. The upstairs hallway was dark, the doors to the bedrooms slightly ajar. I moved cautiously, every creak of the floorboards making me flinch. Max stayed close, his growling a constant reminder of the danger. I pushed open the door to our bedroom and froze. There, in the middle of the room, was a figure. Tall, dressed in black, wearing a ski mask. The intruder turned to face me, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he lunged. I swung the wrench, but he was too quick. He dodged to the side and tackled me to the ground. We struggled, rolling across the floor. I felt his hands around my neck, squeezing as I fought to get free. Max jumped in, biting and clawing at the intruder. The man let go of me to fend off Max, giving me a chance to grab the wrench again. I swung it with all my might, hitting him on the side of the head. He collapsed, unconscious. I scrambled to my feet, breathing heavily. My hands were shaking, and my heart felt like it was about to explode. Max stood over the intruder, still growling. I quickly grabbed my phone and called 911. "The police are on their way," the operator assured me. "Stay on the line and keep the intruder subdued if you can." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and took a step back, keeping my eyes on the man on the floor. My mind was racing. Why had he chosen our house? What was he looking for? Minutes later, I heard sirens approaching. The relief I felt was immense. The police arrived, bursting through the front door with their flashlights and weapons drawn. They quickly took control of the situation, handcuffing the intruder and leading him out of the house. "Are you okay?" one of the officers asked, his face full of concern. I nodded, still in shock. "I think so. Just shaken up." Max had calmed down but stayed close to me, his tail wagging slightly as if sensing the danger was over. The police took my statement, and I watched as they searched the house for any signs of how the intruder had gotten in. They found a broken window in the basement, the likely point of entry. "You're lucky your dog was here," one of the officers said. "He probably saved your life." I knelt down and hugged Max, feeling a surge of gratitude. Yeah, he's a good boy. The rest of the night was a blur. The police took the intruder away, and I was left alone in the house, the power finally restored. I couldn't bring myself to go back to sleep. Instead, I sat on the couch, Max by my side, and waited for the first light of dawn. In the days that followed, I found out more about the intruder. He had been wanted for a string of burglaries in the area, targeting homes that seemed empty or vulnerable. It was pure chance that he had chosen our house that night, thinking it was an easy target. But the randomness of it all made it even more terrifying. It could have been anyone. It could have been worse. I installed a new security system, reinforced the locks, and made sure every window was secure. But the sense of safety I once felt in my home was gone. Every creak, every shadow, every unexpected noise set my nerves on edge. The memory of that night haunted me. The feeling of being watched, the struggle in the dark, the look in the intruder's eyes. I knew it would take time to heal, to feel safe again. But one thing was certain, I would never take my safety for granted again. Max remained my constant companion, always by my side, a reminder of the night we faced the darkness together and survived. Living alone had its perks. The freedom to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, was something I cherished. My small, cozy apartment in the city was my sanctuary. It was on the 4th floor of an old building, but I liked its character. The creaky wooden floors, the large windows that let in the morning sun, and the view of the city skyline made it feel like home. It was a Thursday night, and I was exhausted from work. I had just finished dinner and was getting ready for bed. The apartment was quiet, the only sounds coming from the occasional car passing by and the hum of the refrigerator. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and slipped into bed. I always kept my bedroom door slightly ajar, a habit from childhood. It made me feel less alone. I was drifting off to sleep when I heard it, a faint click like a door closing. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe one of the neighbors. But then I heard footsteps, soft and deliberate, moving through the living room. I sat up in bed, straining to hear. The footsteps stopped, and there was silence. My mind raced. Did I lock the front door? I was sure I did, but doubt crept in. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my hands trembling. I dialed 911, my heart pounding. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, almost soothing. Someone's in my apartment, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. I think they're in the living room. Stay calm. What's your address? I gave her the information, and she assured me that police were on their way. Can you lock yourself in a room? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm in my bedroom. The door is open a bit. Should I close it? Yes, but do it quietly, she instructed. I slid out of bed and tiptoed to the door, gently pushing it closed. I turned the lock and backed away, trying to make as little noise as possible. The footsteps started again, closer this time. I could hear the floorboards creaking just outside my door. I held my breath, my entire body tense. The doorknob rattled. I stifled a gasp, pressing my back against the wall. The intruder was trying to open the door. I heard them mutter something under their breath, frustration creeping into their voice. The rattling stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, a loud crash as the door was kicked open. I screamed, dropping the phone. The intruder burst into the room, a shadowy figure with a ski mask covering their face. They lunged at me, and I scrambled away, tripping over the nightstand. I grabbed the lamp and swung it wildly, hitting them in the shoulder. They grunted and staggered back, giving me a chance to run. I darted out of the bedroom and down the hall, my bare feet slipping on the wooden floor. I could hear the intruder behind me, their footsteps heavy and fast. I reached the living room and yanked open the front door, bolting out into the hallway. I pounded on my neighbor's door, praying they were home. The door flew open, and Mrs. Jenkins, a sweet elderly lady, stood there, her eyes wide with shock. "Help me!" I cried. "Someone's in my apartment!" She pulled me inside and locked the door, her hands shaking. We stood there, listening. The hallway was silent. I heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. Relief washed over me, but I knew it wasn't over yet. We waited, barely breathing, until we heard the heavy footsteps of police officers running up the stairs. They burst into the hallway, and I opened Mrs. Jenkins' door, pointing to my apartment. "They're in there!" I shouted. The officers rushed in, their weapons drawn. I clung to Mrs. Jenkins, my heart still racing. Moments later, they dragged the intruder out in handcuffs. He looked at me, his eyes cold and empty. I shuddered, turning away. The police questioned me, took my statement, and assured me I was safe now. They explained that the intruder had likely been watching the building, waiting for an opportunity. It seemed like a random break-in, but the randomness made it even more terrifying. It could have happened to anyone. I stayed with Mrs. Jenkins that night, too shaken to go back to my apartment. The next day, I called my landlord and had the locks changed. I installed extra security measures, including an alarm system and cameras. But the sense of safety I once felt in my home was shattered. Every night, I double-checked the locks and peered out the windows, my nerves on edge. Every creak, every unexpected sound sent a jolt of fear through me. I knew it would take time to feel safe again, but I was determined not to let fear control my life. The memory of that night haunted me, the image of the intruder bursting through my door, the cold look in his eyes. I realized how vulnerable I had been, how quickly everything could change. But I also realized how strong I was, how I had survived. Living alone had its perks, but it also meant I had to be my own protector. I learned to be vigilant, to trust my instincts, and to never take my safety for granted. The city I once loved now felt like a place of hidden dangers, but I refused to let fear drive me away. My apartment was still my sanctuary, and I was determined to reclaim it.